All right, everybody. Hey, WIBS 2022. Welcome. Welcome to this session. Raw beer with Linda Van Loon out of Oslo, Norway. I am Michelle Wonder. I am one of the WIBS team members. I do the web marketing, social media, all that good stuff. And very, very happy to be able to moderate today with Linda. Due to the extreme time difference, 9 hours advance of us. We had slotted her in for this time, Saturday at 4:15, I believe, and that is like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. her time. So we're doing a recorded session here. So you all are watching us in the past. This is April 12th. It's about 12:30 my time, about what, 9:30 your time, Linda?
Yes, 9:30.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So, we can still be drinking a beer. That's a totally legit time to drink a beer, especially for you. For me, Tuesday at 12:30, sure, why not? I can hang. It's for the summit, so I'll do it. I'll bite the bullet. So a little bit different, y'all, with it being a recording. We're not going to have the ask a question function going, or the polls or anything like that. So please go ahead and enjoy the chat room. You guys can chat with each other while you're watching. And just like any other session, they're recorded, so you can come back and watch anytime you'd like. You can always bounce around to different sessions. Just right above my head here where it says Raw Beer with Linda Van Loon, you can click on that, and it's going to show you a bunch of the other sessions with all the time frames and all that. So I'm sure by the end of day one, you guys have figured out how to navigate around. So we're probably good on that. But thank you again for coming in and checking this out. Raw Beer with Linda Van Loon. Let's go ahead and have her introduce herself. Welcome, Linda.
Well, thank you. So my name is indeed Linda van Loon. I'm a Dutch brewer who moved to Norway one day before pandemic started, and perfect timing. Can recommend to everyone
Yeah,
if you want to emigrate day before pandemic. Perfect. So I moved
right.
here to brew traditional Norwegian beer and especially raw beer.
Wow, wow. How did a Dutch girl end up in Norway to brew traditional beer? I mean, I think that's a good place to start. Like, how did you get into brewing to begin with?
Yeah, well, I've been asked these questions quite a few times now, and yeah, that really got me thinking. What made me start brewing? And well, it was quite recently that I realized that my passion for like brewing, fermentation, and traditions in general goes back to my childhood. So it goes back to my first love, actually. My first love was called Herman, and I'm still smiling when I think about Herman. So I was around 7 years old when my mom brought Herman home, and I think she got Herman from her boss. And Herman came with a little note saying all the stuff that Herman liked to eat and when he liked to be fed, and especially that he really enjoyed being around people. And no, Herman, Herman is not a pet. He's not a cat, not a dog. No, Herman um, was a friendship sourdough starter.
Ah,
Remember in the 80s when you had like these chain letters that you had to send to friends because otherwise
oh
something
yeah.
bad would happen? Well, Herman was the same, but Herman didn't come with any consequences. Yeah, maybe
Oh,
Herman
good.
dying himself. But so the concept of Herman was quite similar. Herman would be fed, Herman would grow, and then from Herman you could like split it in four and then give it to four of your friends. Use one part to brew to make the bread or cake, and then one for your next starter for Herman. And
Ah, how cool.
yeah, and I immediately fell in love with him. Just this weird smelly, bubbly thing that was in the corner of the kitchen, and then later on you would make like this weird loaf of bread from it, like this cakey loaf of bread that was like a little bit sweet, and and because it was only me and my mom, yeah, we had way too much for ourselves, so we'd also share it with our neighbors and with friends, and with that you just connected in a different way with people. And I remember as a child that I really found that amazing, like this, not only the whole process of having like this liquid gooey stuff that made like bread, but also asking people like, hey, do you want to try it, and see people happy. And yeah, I think that was really, yeah, really what made me fall in love with Herman as well, just the whole complexity around it. And
Yeah. Did you talk to Herman
of
when you
course
fed him and stuff like that? And yeah.
I talked to Herman.
Okay.
We
Okay.
developed, yeah, we developed definitely a good relationship. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's one of the yeah, the things that I still do actually is talk to my yeast cultures. I'm quite famously known for this.
Awesome.
So
Glad to hear it.
yeah,
Hey,
but
yeast are people too. Yeast are people too, darn it.
exactly, my mom actually was less fond of Herman than I was. So eventually she stopped with Herman. But yeah, my love for Herman is, yeah,
Oh
is
no.
still
Did you
here.
have a
He's
little funeral for Herman? Or did you
no,
have just your own little ceremony of saying goodbye and being sad?
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
It's but then I mean, I dived a little bit deeper into what Herman was, and I mean, I was 7 years old back
Yeah,
then,
that's remarkable.
and that is actually where my obsession with microorganisms started. My mom even bought me a microscope for my 10th birthday, I think it was, and needless to say, none of my houseplants survived back then because I just cut off pieces and put them under the microscope because I just wanted to know everything, and I just put everything underneath it and had no idea what I was doing, of course. And yeah, that's where yeah, this studying of everything weird and tiny started. And
Awesome.
basically that's the story of my life, studying everything
Nice.
tiny and weird. And
Yeah, so did you go into schooling for that?
yeah, yeah, so I started
Awesome.
biochemistry. And actually in our first year we learned how to brew beer. It was like part of this, like, this is fermentation biology class. But we were not able to, or not able, we're not allowed to drink the beer because of dirty glassware. And right now I start
Oh.
thinking that that was a lie, but I'm not sure. um,
Right.
yeah, at least that's where my, yeah, my love for fermentation was born as well, because I got to see the more scientific side of the whole thing. And
Yeah, that's so fun. I
yeah,
mean, if you're going to get people excited about microbiology, where's a better place to start? Like, this makes these tasty beverages. Check it out and look how easy it
exactly.
is.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially when you're a new student, when you're first year
Yep.
student. I mean, the yeah, basically the only things that my classmates did, not me of course, is drinking. So it's nice to get like a better
Not
understanding.
you, of course. Of
No,
course, Linda.
no, no,
Okay.
no. I don't drink.
For
No,
real.
no. I only taste, only for quality control purposes.
Ah,
It's,
okay. Is that
yeah,
true? Oh,
no.
great. Cool. Oh, okay. I was
Of
going to
course,
say, I'm trying to be cool with that. Okay, yeah, no, that's great. Okay,
yeah,
good. You're fibbing a little. You're playing with me.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But yeah, but in a yeah, as a
Ah,
first year student of biochemistry, it was definitely a fun course to learn how to brew beer. And back then, I was already drinking craft beer, even though craft beer wasn't the big thing back then in the Netherlands. There were
yeah.
only like a handful of breweries, I think, around. So there wasn't that much choice, but still, yeah, I definitely did enjoy it already then.
You gravitated to the good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
remember that I had a conversation with one of my teachers one of the days, and I was just like, I have no idea what to do with what I'm studying. Actually, yeah, it wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking to me, but like not the practical way. And then he mentioned like, yeah, fermentation is something you can actually do on an industrial scale, and for instance, beer brewing. And then I thought, wow, so it is actually possible to do something cool and fun with this and combine it with craft beer that I was already drinking.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
wonderful.
So after I graduated, I applied for a job in a brewery and was one of
Mm.
the first breweries in the Netherlands actually. It's called the Molen, and I was like, I was doing the lab work, a bit of brewing, and basically mostly just taking care of my yeast babies. And
Did you bring yeast with you to the brewery, or you were taking care of the brewery's
yeah, just the
yeasts?
fermentations itself.
Okay.
Yeah, from the
Okay,
from the
cool.
yeast side.
Yeah,
But
so
I
that's cool
think,
that you transition right into the science side of it with the lab and stuff. So that was
yeah,
the thing
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
really spoken to you the most coming into it.
yeah, and that was definitely a good match there for just teaching me how to brew and aside fermentations and such. And but what the Molen was most famous for, well, most known for back then, was the fact that they had a barrel aging program,
Mm.
and that was just this completely new world for me. I had never seen it and never smelled it. Just all these new aromas and flavors that were there. And I mean, you start with a certain yeast, and then you take it out of a barrel, and it's just completely transformed in something new. And that just, yeah, definitely grasped me. Like you brew one beer, fill 5 barrels, and those 5 barrels will taste completely different. And
Okay,
that,
so they
that
were inoculated barrels,
yeah,
barrels with their own cultures and stuff growing in
yeah,
them
exactly,
and
exactly. There
maintaining
was
throughout.
exactly there was so much in there. And that's when I learned about unwanted bacteria and unwanted
Mm.
yeasts and all these off flavors. And
Yeah.
yeah, just there was this whole black and white thinking around microorganisms going on there. It was completely weird for me. There was this like, there are wanted bacteria and yeast and unwanted ones, and the unwanted ones need to leave the building as soon as possible.
Right?
And
They
was
do not have
basically
their card stamp, not invited to the party.
no, exactly, not invited to the beer party, indeed.
Yeah.
And that was also a little bit what I had learned in university. Like you have the wanted ones, the unwanted ones, the good ones, and the bad ones. It was like super black and white, and I never really got around it because I had like been smelling these completely fascinating aromas and tasting these. Yeah, it was beer that had gone sour in barrels, and they told me that it was because of a yeast called Brettanomyces. Yeah,
Yep.
they told
Good
me a
old
little bit
Brett.
about that. And Brett was a bad boy, definitely. Brett was one that you didn't want to have in there. Brett had
No, no, no. Yep.
no. There was. I remember that we had a beer, and that also had a sticker that it contained Brettanomyces, and yeah, no, there was something that shouldn't be there. That
Huh, that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. That was probably just like you said, it was before if barrel aging was kind of a new thing with beer and stuff, then yeah, I mean it was not considered to be part of, the product. Like you don't want those additional tastes and flavors and notes and stuff. You just, yeah, you want to eliminate it rather than figure out ways to work with it where you want it. Because making
yeah,
sure Brett gets into only the stuff you want can be a challenge.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And um, I think that brewery has also works from like they have an idea what they want to brew, and then they also want the outcome to be the same as what they had intended. So I can imagine that when you're barrel aging, that there is of course a risk. So
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think that the Netherlands is pretty close to Belgium there, and lambic brewing and spontaneously fermented beers have been part of that culture for a really, really long time.
yeah,
So was that kind of not known in Netherlands, or was it just kind of rejected of like that's what they do, that's not what we do?
yeah, basically a little bit like that. It's like it is done in Belgium, and the Netherlands is from historically more of a pilsner country, so we're brewing more less extreme beers, more normal. And even my mom and a lot of moms from my generation would say like, yeah, be normal, you're already crazy enough. And that's a little bit of a thing of my generation, that we know like we have to be normal, just like do what
Yeah.
everyone does and don't do anything crazy. And I think that's transferred a little bit into craft beer as well in the Netherlands, while Belgium
Okay.
with Geuzes and Lambics is, yeah, more extreme. As, and I think that by then, in the beginning, there were not that many Dutch breweries who had experimented with these mixed fermentation brews and such. And yeah, that came later. And actually, I run in one of those breweries after I quit at the Molen. I learned
Mm-hmm.
about a small brewery in Nijmegen called Navel, and they were doing mixed fermentation beers. And
Nice.
that was just this whole new world opening up to me. Like I said,
Yeah.
I had been like learning about like this wanted and unwanted bacteria and yeast, and um, yeah, and everything that I had learned in the past, and also everything that I learned in school was just gone when I worked at Naval. They were
Yeah,
like,
just throw it out the
every,
window. Yeah.
exactly, they were like, bacteria and yeast are welcome. We even made our own house culture, and we got it from grapes from the garden of the mom of the owner, something like that.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
we did some kind of other house cultures, and it was just this blend of bacteria and yeast. And I looked at it under a microscope, and there was so much going on, and it would produce all these funny, funky flavors, aromas.
Right, right.
Everything that was called unwanted was all of a sudden wanted, and everything was accepted. And um, yeah,
That's great.
even things like seasonal variety was accepted. Like if you wanted to brew one of the core beers, then they said like what they would do, for instance, was foraging herbs and fruits. And when these things were off season, then the thing was not added to the beer, or um, a dried version would be added, and that would still make the same beer. While I think in other breweries that's considered like it's not the same quality or it's not the same beer. But there it was like it's seasonal variety. It's we follow
Yeah.
nature more closely. And
Right. No, that's yeah, that's something that's really important, I think, and a lot of people, a lot of consumers respond to that now too, that we don't
yeah.
need to make this regimented, perfect beer that tastes exactly the same every single time. I mean, of course, there's a place for all of that, right? But also, yeah, to be able to just go with what is available and what is timely, and especially when you're dealing with those mixed firms, it's a lot more difficult to control those nuances. You kind of just have to not be normal and be okay with it.
Yeah, exactly, and be open to it. And like I said, we also foraged fruits and herbs from our own food forest. And
Oh,
I remember
nice.
and I remember that I was like stuck in the bushes and picking berries. And then I had like this sudden realization, and this weird thing clicked in me, that I was smiling while doing this. I was smiling while being stuck and in like in a weird position, and I guess it was also raining or something. And then I realized like maybe I do like this because of where I'm coming from, because I come from a farmer's family actually.
Ah, okay. All
But
right.
I always kind of unconsciously neglected this part. I'm also the one in the family who doesn't have the accent from the region that I'm from. And but from that moment on, um, I was all of a sudden like getting proud of my heritage, proud of being able to smile while in the dirt, in the rain, outside. And
Yeah, that's wonderful.
not only did we forage, but also we work together with only local producers of our ingredients, or as much as possible. And we had this maltster who also grew his own grains. And when I was there, it was just a farmer, and all these smells that I knew from when I was young at my grandparents' house, they they all of a sudden, it definitely sparked something in me. Like I said, I was almost proud of where I came from, because I could tell this guy like, hey, I this really remembers me of my childhood almost. And that was really the first time I think that I felt that connection with who I was and who my family was. And yeah, that authenticity,
Yeah.
that and I think that authenticity was also what I could definitely taste in the beers as well. It was just this whole story that me and those beers really, yeah, really connected. And
That's lovely. I mean, you had kind of that epiphany moment where you really truly realized your passion, your desire, your love of doing this and getting in there and getting your hands on these plants, and working in the dirt and working in the brewery and working in the lab all can be together, you know? And like you said, with Herman was a childhood thing, you know, and it sounds
Yeah,
like some of your funky fermentations and the smells and all of that kind of jived with your childhood there. So it does really sound like you had that kind of full circle, and were able to truly embody
yeah,
who you are, you know,
yeah,
and where
exactly.
you want and who you want to be going forward. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I never, like I said, that was one of the moments that I realized that. But it took me many more years to realize that, like that Herman was the one who started all this. That this,
Yeah.
yeah, and like I said, I really felt connected to these beers at Naval. And the one beer that I truly felt connected with was the beer that I made for International Women's Day. And yeah, there was that those beers were really my babies. They even gave me sleepless nights, just like real babies do.
Really?
Yeah,
What was that about? I
all the
mean, were you just
nightmares.
like,
And
yeah, were you
so
just
I made
pondering over and over?
yeah, so I made this beer for International Women's Day, and I love complex beers and like the fascinating ones. And for me, they should really almost tell a story, like from the first sip till like when it's still like lingering in the back of your mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so what I did was I foraged a lot of herbs. I went in the food forest and I was like, this is nice, this is nice. And then on a small scale, I made like brewed teas or like cold infusion, and I was just trying stuff out, like things like sumac, hibiscus, miraca gale, but also purple basil. Purple basil.
Ooh.
If people don't know purple basil, it's amazing. It's like the almost floral sister of basil, and it gives a beautiful purple color. It's yeah, one of the most amazing things I've ever brewed with.
Awesome.
So I made this like this almost like this witch's potion of like all these herbs. And yeah, since I have a background in science, there is also this scientist in me who's like, we need to calculate this. So I did this on like a small scale, but I want to put it in 250 liters of beer. So then I should multiply it by this much, and I ended up with like completely weird numbers, like weird stuff.
Okay.
And I was like, so now I have only have like 20 grams of this herb, and I need to add 50, and things just didn't make sense anymore. But yeah, not everything is just forageable in large quantities. So I just had to eyeball stuff and just throw in, and yeah, that's where the nightmares basically started. Like, did I add too much? Did I add too little? Did I completely ruin everything right now because the ratios were not the same anymore? And yeah,
Would you be
that
able
beer.
to talk to your head brewer about that and find out like kind of what you should try to do or
No, he said, just wait, just wait and see. And
I
we've all
love
been
that.
there, and we've all been there,
Yep.
and but also saying you cannot ruin this beer. That's basically like whatever comes out of it, we either save it or yeah, it will
Yeah,
be.
no, I mean when you're working in that kind of brew house, you can like, okay, well we're gonna put it in a barrel for 6 months and see what happens to it then,
Yeah, so
or
it came
we
already
can
out.
blend it with something over here, and yeah.
Exactly, because we had 160 barrels, and I picked one of them, and it was the first year it was a single barrel, second year it was a double barrel, even triple
Mm,
barrel, and
yeah.
yeah, so everything was possible, but yeah, those sleepless
Yeah, no,
nights.
you still get kind of panicked and yeah, we've all been there.
But it turned out beautiful. Yeah,
Excellent.
it's one of my most favorite beers I've ever brewed.
Excellent.
Both
So
of
what
them.
kind of lessons would you give other brewers in those situations?
Ooh,
Like
that's
if
a
they
good
want to try
question.
something new, they want to try something daring, but they're not quite sure what the results might be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the most important question that I've learned in all this right now is that science and mixed fermentation are not a match. And I come back to that later on. But Like I said,
Interesting.
it's not something that you should calculate. So yes, you can work with the ratio, so you know how much of this and this you can add, and roughly you can make rough estimations, but calculating it to like kilograms, grams, that's almost impossible, because there are so
Right.
many variables. So for instance, the pH of the beer can impact the flavor as well. Is there active yeast? um, there are so many ways that you can add a herb. You can do cold infusion, you can make a tea, you can leave it in for a day, for a week, and things, for instance, like elderflower, you shouldn't leave in for too long. And these things, yeah, it's it is beautiful, and but also tricky, therefore. So like I said, everything in science, like calculation wise, there's so much more to the
Right.
equation than only the amount that you add.
This is where the
And
art comes into it, right?
it's
I mean,
definitely where the
that's the
art
thing,
and
that's the beauty of brewing,
yeah,
is it
the
can be
art and
very strict scientific framework, but yet there's so much room for creativity and like you said, I mean, things that just cannot be quantified.
yeah, exactly. So especially when you don't work with stuff that's off the shelf and stuff with a limited availability. And stuff with a limited availability, you should use wisely. You cannot use more than you harvest. And I think that's also one of the biggest problems in society. But that's aside. Uh,
Yeah. Were you boiling your beers there? Was that a boiled process?
yeah, there was still a boiled process indeed.
Okay.
So it was there when I got like fascinated by Brettanomyces. My necklace is even saying Brettanomyces. You cannot see it, but how much I love
I
him.
thought that that's might be what that was. I couldn't quite make it out, but
Yeah,
now that you say it, I'm like, I got confirmation. Okay,
it says
that's beautiful.
Brettanomyces. Yeah, so could have made one with Herman, but it's Brettanomyces now.
Oh, Herman, that would be sweet.
So when I worked at Naval, I learned more about Brettanomyces, and then I also learned that there was a festival in Amsterdam every year called Carnival of Brettanomyces. It's a festival.
Mm.
It's 3 days, I think, and it's filled
Ooh, we
with
love festivals.
tastings, only sour beers, so only Brett. Brett is the main guest there, and it's
Okay.
such a niche festival. And
Yeah.
like one of the first years, I went to a lecture from a guy called Lars Marius Garsel, and I
Yeah,
guess
we've all
he's the
heard of him.
exactly he's the guy guru. If you want to know
Yeah.
anything about traditional Norwegian brewing, he's your guy.
Oh yeah,
And
his
I
book
remember,
is fantastic. Yeah, his
yeah,
book is fantastic. His blog, Lars blog. I mean, yeah.
yeah. And if you ever get to like go to a lecture from him, he's an amazing speaker. I remember
Well,
that
you know
it's
that yeah, that
that year.
festival was online last year. It was on Crowdcast. It was
Yeah,
digital.
exactly.
It was
Yeah,
amazing. I
that
went
was a
to it
brewing
and I
festival.
was
Yeah.
loving it. Because they had actual like three different places in Norway that were brewing different types of traditional beer, and they would check in on them, and you got to watch them throughout their brew day. I loved it, Linda. I felt like I was hanging out with some new brew buddies
Yeah,
from all these different places in Norway, and it was great.
yeah, exactly. That was exactly the same feeling that I got because I went to his lecture and it was about Krijk and about traditional brewing. And
Yeah.
I think it was like a 3 hour lecture and it was filled with like pictures of farmers brewing beer. And again, that farmers, my farmers
Right?
was like,
Yep.
oh my God, this is the most authentic way of brewing that I've ever seen. This is just real. This is not like we're putting in, I don't know what, peanut butter, chocolate, and marshmallows. No, this is just,
Oh yeah.
this is
Dissing
just
on
a
the
guy.
pastry stouts. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you for that one.
Exactly. This is just a guy who's brewing while, yeah,
Yeah, and it's like
it,
you said, it's authentic, it's real, and it's almost history. It's live history, right? Like this is the way beer has been made across the globe for the vast majority of human civilization. The
yeah,
industrialization of it all is a very new thing. So
yeah, exactly.
I
I
can
mean, there,
imagine it's quite invigorating to go and see it
yeah, so
firsthand.
those pictures and those stories, I was just completely sold on this whole Norwegian thing. And fun fact, I was
Nice.
already learning Norwegian by then.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah,
Okay. So once again, it kind of your path just collides with the right time with the right things.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that's
And
wonderful. Were you planning to emigrate to Norway already at that point, or?
no, no, it's really funny. People keep asking me that question, like, "Were you learning Norwegian to emigrate?" And it's just like full no, no. I was, to be completely honest, I was just really, really bored, and I was a big fan of a band that was singing in Norwegian. So
There you
yeah,
go.
so that's why I started studied Norwegian. But yeah, it came
That
definitely in
happens.
handy later on. Yeah. So at the same festival, a year later, I met a guy named Amund Polden Arnesen, and he was giving a lecture about raw beer. And
Here we go.
that's where we started talking. And 2 years
Yep.
later, he invited me over to Norway, and he asked me if I wanted to work for a brewery called ICOT. And that's where basically the whole story starts of the Dutch girl who moved to Norway to brew traditional Norwegian beers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's get into what it's like to be at that brewery now. Like, tell us a day in the life of Linda and the Raw Ale Brewery, the Raw Beer Brewery.
Yeah, so the brewery was founded in 2014 by Amen and Björn, and they just fell in love with traditional brewing as well. But they also thought like we can make this in a modern way, but it doesn't make sense if we would import like raw materials. If we don't use local malts, if we don't use local ingredients, then this whole thing doesn't make any sense. So until the day of today, we only use Norwegian ingredients, and we therefore also don't use hops because hops in Norway not a good match to grow. So if
Right,
we have
right.
if we have
Interesting.
to use it, then we would. But in general, we only use Norwegian ingredients. We have three good craft maltsters here in Norway, and
Excellent.
really happy with their malts. We use local berries, and yeah, so no pineapples or anything, no Norwegian berries, and yeah, so it's the same as in what I did at Naval. Same concept almost.
Right, right.
Everything local, keep everything green, real. And recently, we even got like a local research fund to make koji and miso from spent grains, and thus upcycling our waste streams, which is super
Yay.
cool. And we also make vinegar from our waste stream. So yeah, we really try to yeah do the whole
Walking the
sustain.
walk. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So do you
exactly.
guys still forage and stuff like that? Or what do you
Yeah,
do for
so
like bittering components and stuff in the beers?
So we don't really need bittering components
Okay.
in our beers. So
Okay, because
what
you're
we
doing
do
all
is
sours, yeah.
yeah, we do all sours, and we also barrel age or put everything in foeders or wood. So
Okay, so
it's
that wood gives you that little bit of astringency, a little bit of that
yeah,
bite,
it's dry.
along with the acidic type of
Exactly, exactly.
flavors
So
that you're getting.
flavor wise, because of the high protein content, we have more umami flavors, especially after barrel aging. It really gives this yeah, almost
Right, because
mushroom.
these are no boil beers, right? What you're
Yeah, this
doing
is
there.
all raw. We don't boil
Okay. Okay.
anything.
Yeah, so
No.
you don't get that hot break that precipitates out a lot of those proteins, so it translates
Yeah,
into the wort.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
That's
How fun is that? Are you guys like one of the only raw beer producers in the area? Or are there other ones that follow in the same tradition? Or
so commercially we're the only one in Norway. There so this whole raw beer brewing there is it's a thing in the Nordics and Baltic. So there's still in Finland like a Sati producer that makes it commercially in the Baltics, I think. There's also some commercial raw beer. But in Norway, we're definitely the only one who does only raw beer. So we make different styles in raw beer. So
okay.
yeah, so
What are
really
some of the
fun.
styles?
So you can basically brew everything up to a amber-ish because above that, like porter or stouts, you really need those Maillard reactions that come from boiling. So until that, we can make everything. We have a brown beer and a amber as well, but it's mostly yeah, basically golden sour base and then added fruits to it.
Yeah, so kind of like Oid Bruin, or those brown Flanders beers, the red Flanders beers,
Yeah,
similar to
exactly.
those, like the Belgian
Yeah,
styles.
that's
Yeah,
as dark as we can go. Like I said, you just need the Maillard flavors for the
right.
darker beers.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that makes sense. I hadn't really thought about that. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah, so raw beer is uh, it's really funny when you look back in like history books, like far, far back. Like the first beer that was brewed, I think the Egyptians were brewing that. They made something that was quite similar to raw beer because the way they make the beer was, of course, in a wooden vessel, and wood and fire don't go well together for some weird
That makes
reasons.
sense. Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite similar to what we make. Actually, it was also raw beer, but that's what people sometimes forget a little bit when they get so absorbed by this whole boiling thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. I bet you're right. I mean, beer's probably been made without boiling far longer than it was
Yeah.
with, just like hops, right? Like we think of hops as being one of the defining elements of beer. But
Mhm.
again, it's, vast majority of human history of beer production did not have hops, and had all the other yummy stuff that you guys foraged for and
Yeah,
put in your
exactly,
beers. So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's wonderful. Do you
yeah.
guys do any sort of a water treatment on your water? I know the like juniper and the Norwegians with the juniper infused water and stuff is something that Lars talks a lot about.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we don't do that. No,
Okay.
it's also quite hard on that scale, but also because juniper doesn't really grow in Oslo. It does grow in Oslo, but not as much, and we would need quite large quantities. And again, what I said before, like it's yeah,
You want to
if
stay
it's not
local
there,
and
then
keep it.
you
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, then you shouldn't use it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
What size is the brew house?
1,000 liters. So I don't know how much of a
Okay.
barrel system that is. So
Yeah, no, that's a decent size for sure. So
yeah,
yeah, that would be difficult to go out and hand pick enough juniper off the
yeah,
city
exactly,
trees to
exactly,
get going
exactly.
on that.
But yeah, it's definitely part of the Norwegian brewing traditions. Yeah, you have roughly three big traditions. In the middle, they smoke their malts. In the south, they love boiling. They boil for at least 3 hours, so you get more
Right.
Maillard flavor in the beer. And then there's the raw beer that we make. That's yeah. And if you really want to try this stuff, then go to the Kuno Festival. That was the festival that you were mentioning earlier. That took place online, which is
I bet you this year it'll be back in person, which I'm sure everyone's very happy to get in
actually
person.
last year. It was already in person.
Oh,
I
was
was
it? Okay.
yeah, I was a judge at that beer festival. So a
Oh, how was
Dutch girl
that?
judging Norwegian traditional beers. I felt a little bit like an intruder, I must admit. But yeah, just like I said, when I first tried mixed fermentation beers, there was this world like opening up to me, and then there was like this traditional Norwegian home brews, and it's unlike anything I've ever tried. I mean, I'm familiar with raw beer. I'm familiar with this little bit of a peanutty flavor. I'm familiar to what they brew in Moss, so it's more like Maillard. I'm familiar with smoked beers, definitely familiar with the smoked beers because I love them. But there's just so much going on. Just some people would say maybe it's an off flavor, but it's not in these styles. And there's just the best thing about it is that it's unforgiving, it's real, it's authentic. Nobody is trying to polish something that's not really good. It's it's just it's there, and it's yeah, it's amazing. It's just I cannot explain just this
Yeah.
weirdness
So that
about it.
should definitely be added to the beer travel logs, the wish lists of people out there. I
Definitely,
mean, we all have
definitely.
our own beer travel logs.
Mhm.
I've, being in America, don't have access to continental Europe that easily. So, Germany, Belgium, England, all of those places are spots that I've been to England a few times, but it was prior
Mhm.
to my real love of beer, as I did live in Ireland for a little bit. But yeah, so now it's like I'm gonna add that one to the list for sure,
Yeah,
because what a unique, totally unique, right? Like
it's
it is of place too. You can't go anywhere else and experience this.
Yeah, and the best thing is that there's like a brew day included, so
Mm,
you can visit a traditional brewer who actually measures the
nice.
temperature with his elbow, with his elbow.
Yeah,
And
that's
I remember the
great.
first year that I was there, I was just so amazed. And then you start talking to these people who make these beers, and they ask you like, "What do you mean how I brew my beer? It's just how I brew." And well, I'm just like, "No, this is unique. I want to learn more about it." But for them, it's just, yeah, they've been doing this for many many years, and that's how traditions in Norway also work. Because I mean, geographically, there are so many villages just separated because of mountains
Mm,
and more rough terrain. And I mean, in winters, these villages cannot talk to each other basically, or at least historically, of course.
right.
So these traditions are much more preserved than, for instance, in the Netherlands. And there's so much more respect for traditions here as well in Norway in general. So yeah, I think this festival with the celebration of traditional brewing is definitely something that spoke to me
Do
there.
people hear raw beer and think, "Oh no, it's going to be dangerous," or like, that's not right,
Yes,
or is there
yes,
like some inherent
uh,
biases that people have about raw
definitely.
beer?
Yeah, yeah. Because of course, I mean, you learn in brew school, you boil because you want to sterilize your wort, and that's the last thing that we do. Although we have like a pasteurization step within our process, so we add what's it, 212 degree Fahrenheit water, but
Yes.
that only ups the complete temperature of the mash until 167. And I
Okay.
actually looked into this. That's basically why I came here. I looked into this pasteurization step. So, do harmful microbes survive into the actual beer? But what I learned is that it's not enough to do any damage. Also, because the kwijk that we use will sour the beer within 24 hours to 3.2 pH of 3.7, which is way below the threshold of harmful bacteria or pathogenic bacteria. So yeah, no, we it's definitely not harmful, and I'm still
Okay.
alive. So
And you drink plenty of it.
of course I drink plenty of this the whole day. So no,
Yes. Well, you
I'm
mentioned your process. Can you give us like a little rundown of
yeah.
grain
Well,
coming in to bottling? Like, just give us a quick kind of
yeah.
process
So
of a raw
we
ale, raw
we
beer.
mash at normal temperatures, like around 155 degrees, and because we use craft maltsters, there is like seasonal variation there a little bit. So it's around 155 degrees. Then we leave it for an hour. We stir, and the amount of water that we add, it's a little bit the traditional way. So we just eyeball it a little bit. Cannot say how much we add. It's just,
Right.
yeah, the right amount.
The
So we add,
right amount. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
And then after an hour, we start the pasteurization step. We add 212 degree water, and we leave that for 15 minutes. And by doing that, the whole temperature, like I said, will rise until 167 degrees. And that
Yeah, so it's a
temperature is
mash
actually,
out basically. Yeah, you do a
yeah,
mash out. Yeah.
and that temperature is really important because the other bias that also the question that I get asked quite a lot is, isn't there any DMS formed? Does your beer taste like vegetables? No, because we're
Good
just
question.
under that threshold of formation of DMS.
Because that happens at hotter temperatures, higher
Yeah,
temperatures.
just a little slightly higher temperature. And then we sparge a little bit more with 176 degree water. And then we transfer to our IBC. And then we pitch the yeast at 39 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degree Fahrenheit, I think. So that is
Good
the
old
other
Kvike.
thing that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like I said, mixed
Yeah.
fermentation and science is just not a mix, not a match. Just I
Yeah.
remember that like every time, in fact, I think it was the first year that I worked here. It was like almost weekly that I shouted through the brewery, like, "This doesn't make sense at all," but it is happening, and
Mm-hmm.
that's also what I just love about making raw beer. It's just, yeah, everything is against what science says that's possible, and I think that's also, and it's something that I also hope is that it can be such an innovative way of brewing if people just throw those biases out of the window. Like, it is safe, it is possible, we've been doing it, maybe it can use some tweaking, but there are so many benefits of making raw beer.
Talk
It's like,
about those. Yeah, let's hear
it's
some.
like energy saving. Like the biggest energy consuming thing in the brewery is heating up something, heating up 1,000 liters of beer. That's
Yeah, massive
like,
quantities of liquid. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That just doesn't make sense anymore when we talk about climate change. I mean, yeah, that's just completely ridiculous. And by skipping that whole step, we're just saving ridiculous amounts of energy. And I mean, with those super high energy prices right now, it's yeah, we're
Yeah.
really happy that we don't boil. So
Right, right.
yeah,
You're like, that doesn't affect our bottom line nearly as
exactly.
much as all the other breweries right now.
Yeah, and also I think it's just a different flavor. There's craft beer has become more diverse over the year, but also less diverse since everyone is buying the same hops, the same malts, and I think raw beer can definitely be like the new player in the field of like new flavors and new interesting technique. Basically, also technique because it's not a style; it's just a different technique.
Right,
And
exactly.
my colleague always jokes about this, but I secretly see it definitely also as something super innovative. And that's that our brew day isn't that long because we don't boil. So you
You
have
don't have
more
to
time to
boil and
spend.
you don't have to chill nearly as much either, right?
Exactly. So you have
Yeah,
more time to spend with your family, which is of course really, really important, and especially in these times where yeah,
yeah.
the work-life balance is sometimes a little bit yeah,
A little
wobbly.
bit wackadoo. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's yeah, that's
That's
something.
wonderful.
Yeah, and yeah,
So you said it ferments out in about 24 hours, and then do you like rack it to a secondary, and is that when you do your additions of fruit or any kind of different things you're adding into it, or is that put in prior to fermentation?
no, that's after fermentation. So everything goes into foeders or barrels for ooh, what is it, 3 months to 3 years maybe,
Okay, yeah, yeah, you got
and
to get
then
that
and since
secondary
we have foeders,
inoculation, let it do its thing.
yeah, and since we have foeders and our foeders is more of a Solera system, so we pull 1,000 liters and we put 1,000 liters back in, and yeah, we put
Interesting.
berries in there, and we also reuse the berries. So we have first use of berries and then second use of berries, and
That's great.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
eventually we make vinegar of it.
Mmm.
So
Yummy. That sounds good.
yeah, we definitely try to use everything and be yeah, as sustainable as possible.
That's wonderful. It's an
Yeah,
important thing. So it's nice to hear that, you, like you said, I mean, just the process that you guys choose with the no boil, it has ramifications across what you just think about the flavor profile and everything, but really the energy savings and all this different stuff. I know I've heard people, I think it was I think it might have been a wireman representative talking about how we should, God, what was it? Some like trying to come up with some creative ways to massively reduce the water usage, inside
yeah,
of a brewery, because obviously that is a really big one, and us
mhm,
brewers, we don't want to think about it too much.
yeah,
But like the number of pints of water it takes to create 1 pint of beer is kind of mind-boggling.
yeah.
um
And the
yeah.
CO2 that we produce as brewers, that's I think that was like my most recent realization. I really had like this boom moment where I realized that it sounds really stupid, by the way. I'm sorry for this, but I realized that the CO2 that we're always talking about when we talk about sustainability, la la la, that's the same CO2 that we have in our brewery. That we and CO2 in a brewery is just like yeah, CO2 brewery. La, la, la. It's part of a beer, and it's it's dangerous. We should make sure that it's not too much around in the brewery. But we're actually contributing to this whole climate problem by releasing so much CO2 ourselves.
And then
And
we
that's
buy it back so we can put it back in.
exactly. So maybe that's something that
you
we should
know
should look
Yeah,
into
I
as
feel like the
well.
CO2 recapture is definitely becoming, the systems are getting better. They're becoming a little more
Yeah.
economical. They're a little less intimidating to use. which is, a lot of the things that it takes for mass adoption of things to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, because
Yeah.
most of the CO2 that we use that we purchase to put into our carbonation and stuff like that is a byproduct of creating fossil fuels of
Yeah,
refining refining
exactly.
oil and fuels. So if we have the goal of wanting to eliminate that from our ecosystem and from our process of how we do things in the world, then we're going to have a lot less CO2 generated to then purchase commercially, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
the
exactly.
yeast do it for us. It makes it free. Like, utilize that
Exactly,
resource,
exactly.
y'all.
Yeah.
We like all the other stuff the yeast puts out. We got to get some of that too.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, exactly.
wonderful. Well, that sounds great. I mean, I would love to come over there and have a taste of that. I can't really even fathom. Is raw beer something that a home brewer could do you think?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's a relatively easy step, I think, for a home brewer. I think for
Yeah.
commercial brewery, it's a little bit more. It's harder because you need to start bypassing certain vessels. But for a home brewer, definitely. I mean, like I said, it's been done for centuries on the farms in Norway. It comes from farms, so it comes from home brewing. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. For
And you don't need
sure.
to boil, so you have more time with your family or other stuff.
And your
I
brew
don't know.
day is shorter. Yeah. By the time you
Exactly.
get to the important part and you haven't had already 5 beers and you're like, did I put the yeast in? I can't remember.
Exactly. So you have more
That can be
time to
some of the
drink
hazard
beer
of home brewing.
afterwards.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yes, less cleaning. You don't have to scrape off all that nasty stuff on the bottom of your boil kettle.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
That's
So
great.
yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Linda? I think we've got a pretty good comprehensive roundabout here.
Hmm.
You have a little wrap up for us?
Yeah, I think I want to share what I learned from my whole journey and all these brewing traditions.
Oh,
And
please,
I think that
please.
I realized that because of working with nature, that we often in general are, yeah, longing for quick solutions. Like, for instance, in dating, we're not going out anymore. We're just like swiping on the couch. With TV, I mean, we used to just wait for our favorite TV program, and now we just want to do it on demand. Food is available all year round, and the same goes for beer. Like I said before, batch variety is often seen as a lack of quality. And yeah, while this perfection and perception of quality is more a measurement of how we drifted away from nature for me and from our ancestor. And I think that this drifting um, is is becoming more and more of a problem. It goes against, like I said, these imperfections, and maybe we should let go of, in general, of that word and just start accepting life for what it is, and not wanting to have like pineapples in winter and just go with all those seasons. And like I said, just accept life for what it is. And just like maybe also just like I accepted Herman for what he was, like this smelly, bubbly thing that was just
You
weird.
had to
And
tend to all the time.
exactly, that I
Yep,
fell
need
in.
a lot of love and attention.
Yeah, I
But
think
in the
that's
end, gave you something wonderful, right?
yeah,
And yeah, and really cemented something for you at that
yeah,
age, right? Where we always talk about what can get girls interested in science and all this stuff, and we
yeah,
just need more
yeah.
Hermans out there.
Well, I actually, the fun story, last story, is
Please.
my colleague has a daughter. She's like 7 year old or something, and he said the same. He was like, "Yeah, it would be nice to give her something, yeah, sciencey or something." And I was like, Herman. So I revived Herman. So I looked on the internet, like, what is the recipe for the starter? And then I gave
Yeah.
him this little jar with Herman, and he took it home. And then she renamed it, and it was
Great.
definitely her pet for a while. She really enjoyed it and made bread with it. And yeah, I don't know if she really fell in love with it as much as I did, but
That's okay.
she definitely liked it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, no, sourdough was kind of the thing at the first in I know in America during the initial shutdown, time back in March of 2020 and what have you. People were stuck at home and they wanted something entertaining and fun to do. So baking started going off the charts. And we
Yeah.
had massive flour shortages and all this stuff, and it was because people were getting into sourdough. So sourdough
Yeah.
starters were being born across the land.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, but I
And
think in
also
in
inside.
yeah, oh yeah. But in terms of what you were saying about what you had learned about how people are really longing for a connection back to nature, about to the cycles of life, and not enjoying pineapples in the wintertime. I feel like craft beer is part of that. It's this movement back to artisanal creators and being very cognizant of local ingredients, local processes, keeping things within your community that you can provide so much for
Yeah.
each other inside of your limited local ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful way to interact with people, like you said with the bread, how much it brought people together, that you could share it with folks, and they could find smiles and a reason to say thank you and give appreciation to each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Exactly.
the craft fermentation space really really helps with that too. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
And I really hope that the beer community can go back to that as well.
Yeah.
Go back to
Linda, yeah,
appreciation.
totally. So if any of our summit attendees here would like to learn more or reach out, is there a way that they can find you out there in the internet lands or anything like that if they wanted to reach out and ask a question about anything they've seen today?
I think on our website there's my email address, and yeah,
Okay,
just
great.
send me
So
an
yeah, you
email.
guys can head over to the
I can see.
WCFA.beer and look at our speaker list, and we've got Linda listed there, and we have a link directly to that website right there, so you can jump on there and probably send
Yeah,
her send her some info or ask a question.
yeah,
Great.
definitely. I'm always willing to help and to talk about raw beer, talk about pike, and yeah,
Yeah, and I will say it was really great meeting you, Linda. Linda was over here in the stateside back for the Pink Boots National Conference that was held in 2022 in North Carolina. That was in February. She was the recipient of a scholarship provided by this wonderful lady, Rachel, from Pilot Brewing in North Carolina. I thought that was the coolest thing, that she's just like, I want to
yeah,
help support some woman to come and experience this. And you were lucky enough to win.
yeah. I'm super thankful for that experience.
Yeah,
It's
that was wonderful. Yeah, it was great to get to talk to you and meet you and chat over dinner and learn everything about what you guys are doing. And that's how we ended up connecting and bringing you onto
yeah,
the summit. So I'm so grateful that you were able to join us. That we were able to make this work. I thought everything you talked about was really fascinating. Whole, like you said, it's a whole new kind of area of beer that hasn't been super explored yet.
yeah,
So many people are looking for what's the next trendy thing in a beer, or what's the next kind of cool thing that can come out.
hmm
And I think raw beer is something that should definitely be explored. So thank you so much for
yeah.
sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, y'all, we're going to say goodbye for this session. I believe this is just about wrapping up Sunday or Saturday's presentations. So if you want to head over, we're going to have the summit close or the goodbye session for today. Give you a little sneak peek of what's coming tomorrow, and we'll see you all in the morning. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Saturday, y'all. Bye bye.